Obligatory Endgame spoiler alert! We hope you've seen it if you're clicking the video, but we want to make sure you know that we're going to be taking a deep dive into the latest Avengers movie. That's right, we're combing through every detail looking for clues as to what lays in store for Earth's mightiest heroes. When their next film is coming out, we don't know. But that doesn't mean there weren't hints and Easter eggs that could foreshadow what's to come. So, we're theorizing, investigating, and straight up obsessing over everything that Endgame gave us. Come down the rabbit hole with us as we take a look at what the future of the MCU could have to offer, specifically in the world of the Avengers. After a long run of white male-led films, the success of Black Panther and Captain Marvel have shaken up the conventional wisdom behind the MCU, and blockbuster filmmaking at large. And nowhere showcased the changing faces of the MCU more than Endgame. While much of the story was focused on the original 6 Avengers, Marvel strongly hinted at a more diverse future with several big moments. One, of course, was the splash page-sized shot of the MCU's female heroes as they backed up Captain Marvel's charge through the final battle. There was also a pair of passing of the torch moments as Captain America handed his shield off to Sam Wilson, and Thor bequeathed the leadership of Asgard to his pal Valkyrie. One of Endgame's most surprising arcs was the dark journey of Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye. Clint started the film in a peaceful retirement among his family, but after they were killed in the snap, he started a 5-year journey of misguided revenge, executing dozens of gang crime members in a vain attempt to take his pain away. But unlike Thor, whose ending sets up movies to come, or the Hulk's, which is a little more ambiguous, all signs lead to Clint's retirement being permanent this time. His closest connection to the Avengers, Natasha Romanoff, has been severed completely, and Endgame ends with him back with his family. His character arc is complete now. Let the guy rest. But don't let that mean that we're done with Hawkeye forever. Not only does he have a show coming up on Disney+, one we'd bet is set during the years of the snap if you ask us, we think that Endgame hints at another character who could take up the mantle. And we're not talking about Kate Bishop, Hawkeye's protege from the comics, also set to appear on that Disney Plus show, but instead Hawkeye's daughter, Lila Barton. In the first scene of Endgame, Lila is getting an archery lesson from her dad, Clint. After she makes a perfect shot, Clint playfully calls her Hawkeye. And though it's just a tossed-off line, tossed-off lines are how the MCU has set up most of its characters at this point. We wouldn't write her off. Though she wasn't in the movie as much as we initially thought, Captain Marvel may have dropped another key hint at the future of the Avengers. Explaining away her absence for the last 20 years, Carol Danvers says that she functioned as the Avengers for an entire galaxy of other planets. And maybe more crucially, that every planet was feeling the effects of the snap. Could Carol be hinting that her future and that of the rest of the Avengers would have a much more extraterrestrial bent? We'd think so, because after the craziness of the end of Endgame, modern audiences seem to be ready to accept anything. Most superhero movies thus far have kept the action earthbound, but that could change for the Marvel Universe very soon. Another welcome surprise in Endgame was the appearance of Professor Hulk, the perfect synthesis between Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk.
I put the brains and the brawn together, and now look at me.
The character was a fan favorite in the comics, and it was exciting to see him come to life on screen. What's most interesting about Professor Hulk, however, is where Endgame leaves him. Each of the original 6 Avengers are shown to be moving on from the team in some way, either through death like Iron Man and Black Widow, being aged out like Cap, retiring like Hawkeye, or being traded to a different team like Thor. But Hulk seems like staying an Avenger would fit him just fine. Maybe he'll even lead the new team. In looking at where the Avengers will go next, it's important to ask some practical questions, and we have a big one. With Tony Stark out of the picture and the Avengers HQ destroyed, there comes the question of where the Avengers will get their tech from in the future. The answer, as Endgame seems to suggest, would be the nation of Wakanda, led by Black Panther and Shuri. With Okoye serving as a liaison to Wakanda in Endgame's opening, and the spotlight given to her, T'Challa, and Shuri in the final battle, Wakanda appears to be an integral part of the future of the MCU. With Iron Man, Cap, and Thor out of the picture, we have to wonder about who will lead the next generation of Avengers. For us, there's an obvious choice, and that has to be Captain Marvel. After her solo movie earlier this year, Captain Marvel has joined the Avengers with a splash, making her debut in Endgame. And while she might not have gotten the most screen time, she was integral to the success of the team's central mission. Not only did she rescue Tony and Nebula from deep space, but she was also instrumental in keeping the gauntlet from Thanos and ensuring he wasn't able to snap everyone away once again. We're confident Carol Danvers has the abilities to lead the team. But what will the rest of the new Avengers team look like? Well, we think Marvel will have a much younger team on deck for the next Avengers film. The MCU has built up a lot of loyalty over the past 10 years by watching the central cast grow and change with these characters, and that strategy can only increase with a cast of new characters growing into maturity. The obvious example of this would be Spider-Man, but Scarlet Witch and Shuri are also great candidates for a new team, and our bet would be on a similarly youthful supporting cast. Miles Morales, Amadeus Cho, Squirrel Girl. Marvel's roster of young heroes is vast, and we wouldn't be surprised if they dip into that well for the next film. Speaking of leadership and rosters, we have to discuss Sam Wilson, which, if Endgame is to be believed, now holds the title of Captain America. As we saw at the end of the film, Steve Rogers passed along his shield, and probably the name of Captain America, onto his loyal friend. We know Sam, along with his pal Bucky, are headed to their own Disney Plus series, but we hope that wouldn't be the last we see of Sam's incarnation of Cap. Even if he isn't leading the team right away, we think there is no way Captain America shouldn't find his way back to the Avengers one way or another. Hopefully, Sam can function as a mentor figure to a new generation of Marvel heroes. Another strong possibility about the future of the MCU is that they may be looking to the past for inspiration. After Black Widow's death, it's looking like her solo movie would have to be a prequel, and after the success of Captain Marvel, that doesn't seem like such a far-fetched idea. Could Marvel be looking at more films set before Phase 1 or in the period between other movies? And many of the characters, including Captain Marvel herself, Hawkeye, War Machine, Falcon, and several of the Guardians have rich histories worth exploring. Rocket and Groot traveling the galaxy in search of bounties, Captain Marvel fighting space crime in the 20-year gap between her two movies, Thor and Loki on an Asgardian adventure years before the first Thor. Count us in. Speaking of, one of many surprise appearances in Endgame was Loki, thought dead since Infinity War. And since he only appeared in time travel scenes, it seemed like Loki would remain dead. But there are a couple of clues that gave us pause. First is his series set to appear in Disney Plus, and the other is his exit from Endgame. If you don't recall, Loki managed to get his hands on the Tesseract, aka the Space Stone, and was able to transport himself away. Due to Endgame's sketchy time travel rules, we're unsure if that means he has the stone in our dimension or in an alternate one. But either way, some version of Loki is hopping around with a cosmic cube, and that's bad news for the Avengers. Moving on, we have a theory on why Marvel has not yet announced the title of the new Avengers film yet. Because it won't be called The Avengers. We're thinking that the next Avengers movie will be titled A-Force, after the all-female superhero team that debuted in the comics in 2015. Why? Well, if you pay close enough attention in Endgame, you might notice a scene where every female superhero in the MCU thus far teams up, and you also might have noticed that it got a big response online. With Marvel, they usually test-run ideas to see which catch on, and it would be no surprise at all to us if Marvel took notice of what their fans are demanding. As we mentioned earlier, Thor seems to be sticking with the Guardians of the Galaxy for now, and we think there's a reason why. It seems to us that Thor has only really hit his stride as a fan-favorite character in recent years. In his first two films, Thor was a likable character, but he only really seemed to take off in popularity after Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok. And while Thor had a dark character arc in the most recent Avengers films, the end of Endgame seems to have given us back the funnier Thor. This Thor is tonally a much better fit for the Guardians of the Galaxy, and we're excited to see him there. Avengers Endgame unfortunately didn't have much in common with the Fast and Furious movies, but it did have two things in common, and one was the theme of family.
There's always room for family.
The other was a Vin Diesel character who doesn't speak clearly, which is most Vin Diesel characters. But when we say family was a theme, we're talking about the focus on Tony's daughter and his relationship with Pepper, Hawkeye's quest to avenge and bring back his family, Ant-Man's terrifying journey to find his daughter. Time and again, Endgame and even Infinity War emphasized the idea of family. So could some of these legacy characters like Morgan Stark, Lila Barton, and Cassie Lang be the next generation of Avengers? We definitely think so. Hey, speaking of Langs, we couldn't help but notice how seamlessly Ant-Man fit into the roster of the Avengers. Civil War may have showed he could play in the big leagues, but Endgame proved once and for all that Ant-Man could protect more than just the San Francisco suburbs. Whether it was coming up with the time heist, bantering with the team, or giving Tony Stark a heart episode, Ant-Man proved once and for all that he was an Avenger. And the shot of him punching the big Chitauri tooth whale was one of the most entertaining moments in a sequence built off entertaining moments. Whatever shape the new Avengers take, we hope AntMan is involved. We at Screen Rant call it the title card that shocked the world. An impressively prolonged 3-word screen that informed us the Avengers gave up on undoing the snap for 5 whole years. This means that Endgame is set in 2023, aka several years ahead of us, opening up new possibilities for the MCU. What would Wakanda look like in the future? What if we didn't have to wait to see Tony Stark's daughter take over as Iron Man, and she could be fighting Iron Crime in the near future? I mean, 2023 is only 76 years off from 2099, right? A future-set Marvel movie could be a ton of fun, and show us sides of the Marvel universe we never knew existed. Moving on to a less theoretical clue, a moment highly speculated about by fans near the beginning of Endgame is a character alluded to by Okoye. While talking to the Avengers, she reports underwater tremors off the coast of Wakanda. Many fans and news outlets have guessed that Okoye is referring to Namor, the Submariner, a popular character in the comics and longtime enemy of Black Panther. Notably, he's also closely associated with the Fantastic Four, another group of characters due for an MCU introduction. According to Kevin Feige, the movie rights to Namor are still complicated, but he could appear in the MCU. If he did, Namor, an Atlantean prince, is someone we're excited to see make the jump to the big screen. Another easy-to-miss detail in Endgame's final battle is how totally destroyed the Avengers compound is by the end of it. Much like Ultron wrecked Avengers Tower, Thanos has forced the team to once again relocate, maybe backed by something other than Stark Industries. Our guess? T'Challa and Shuri migrating the team to Wakanda. Shuri's workshop from Black Panther is pretty much prepped as a hideout, complete with a workshop for weapons and an endless supply of vibranium. Other possible locations? Captain Marvel migrating the team to space. Or possibly the new Avengers training with Valkyrie in New Asgard. The possibilities are endless. Location is important, sure, but let's talk about lineup again. Another character from the AntMan family stood out to us as worthy of a spot, and it wasn't Scott or Cassie. Fresh from her jealousy at Scott being picked to participate in Civil War, Hope Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, had a memorable presence in Endgame. Be it getting to call Captain America Cap for the first time or participating in the big female hero shot, Wasp was ready for action. Not to mention how actress Evangeline Lilly, known for Lost and the Hobbit films, is more than ready for her time in the spotlight. If Black Panther could be the team's new Captain America and Captain Marvel its Thor, Wasp would be a great Black Widow to Ant-Man's Hawkeye. Look, we're not gonna pretend we fully understood the time travel rules in Endgame. We're just gonna pull a Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Looper and just trust that it all makes sense. But one thing we could glean from Endgame's rules was that changes to the time stream are possible. If Captain America can stick around in the 70s and mess around, and that can cause an old man to appear in the future, then time travel actions can have lasting consequences. And follow us here, but that could mean a certain group of characters starting with X, whose backstory require that they be discriminated against for decades, could be instantly blinked into existence. That's right, the cast of the X-Files. They're canon now. We here at Screen Rant have been very loyal to following the MCU, and for us that meant watching a lot of TV shows in addition to the movies. And we were kinda bummed out how none of the characters from those shows were ever able to show up in the movies. Especially since we invested so much time in a couple of shows of middling quality. We won't say which, but one rhymes with Schmagents of Mield. But one show we didn't regret watching was the excellent Agent Carter. So it was a genuine thrill watching James Darcy, who played Jarvis on the show, get a small cameo in Endgame. Could this mean more TV characters in the movies? We hope so. Put the Punisher in Ant-Man 3! Hey, speaking of cameos, Endgame was almost a parade in that regard and never stopped surprising us with fun appearances. Not only was it impressive that they managed to coax Robert Redford out of retirement and convince Marissa Tomei to appear in the film for a split second, but it was also interesting how many of these cameos became integral to the story. Don't know who Hank Pym is? Too bad, he's important. So's Thor's mom and a red guy in a big cloak who decides who can be pushed off of a cliff. If nothing else, Endgame showed that the MCU's usual approach to making every film accessible may be changing. The MCU now demands loyalty, or long stretches of their movies will not make any sense. On that theme, not only did everyone show up to appear in Endgame, but a vast majority of them showed up to the final fight as well. One of the most surprising additions was that of Pepper Potts, aka Rescue. who swoops into the final battle to assist Tony and the Avengers. Pepper suiting up has been hinted at a bit throughout the years, including a couple of short fight scenes in Iron Man 3. But it was still surprising to see her blasting aliens like a pro. It shows that any character, even one relegated to a love interest or comic relief role, can suit up. Now, we're not a betting website, please do not attempt to bet on our website, but if we were, and if you approached us in 2013, we don't think we would have bet that Thor: The Dark World would have vital plot and emotional significance in the fourth Avengers movie. And yet, here we are. Ditto Doctor Strange, Winter Soldier, and a host of movies we never would have expected to be required viewing for Endgame. But the latest Avengers showed that any movie in the MCU will be called back to in some way. That the most insignificant seeming movies can be extremely important later on. It's hard to say so soon after the film, but we have a feeling that the deaths in Endgame may have more consequence than a typical MCU film. That might be a strange thing to say about a movie that revives millions of people for its third act, but hear us out. Not only does the movie not bring back Iron Man or Black Widow, but it is also respectful to the permanence of the deaths that occurred in Infinity War. Iron Man's snap does not bring back Vision, Heimdall, or Loki, seeming to mean that they are gone for good. Well, maybe not Loki, but could death have more of a sense of consequence going forward? It's looking that way. So concludes our investigation. How did we do? Did we leave any particular stone unturned? As he was dying, did Thanos blink the title of the movie in Morse code? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos.